We are here on a beautiful southern Michiana day, which is that fictitious land that exists between Michigan and Indiana, taking a look at the Wildwood plant. We've recently acquired them in our lineup, at least recently at the time of this filming here at Haylett RV, and anytime we do that, we always try to come down and put our hands on these things and kind of learn a little bit more about what makes them tick, not just the what they do, but the why they do it. Now keep in mind, this footage is like a snapshot in time as to what Wildwood is doing today. So as this footage grows in age, it will begin to be a little less relevant in terms of specific features, but I think the spirit of what makes this brand, I think that story will persist. Let's hop inside. All right, so a bit of housekeeping first and foremost before we get too far along. You see right here that we're looking at a nice Wildwood like you'd find at Haylett RV, and right next to it is its sister, the Salem. A common question I get all the time, and I wanted to just get this right out of the way, is people say, Josh, I see that you have a Wildwood 26D bud. I saw some other dealer, they had a thing called a Salem 26D, but it looked like it was almost exactly the same. What are the differences? And in short, you're looking at them. It's only the exterior skin color and the decals, because one obviously says Salem and one obviously says Wildwood. Do not let someone tell you one is better, superior, different, lesser than the other. They are sisters. They come down the exact same production line. Frankly, until the metal skin goes on, you will not see any difference between them. So as we're going through today, you're actually going to see some branded Salem, some branded Wildwood. So this information that I'm sharing applies equally to both brands. We at Haylett RV just happen to be a Wildwood dealer. And the only thing I ask is that if you do appreciate what we do at Haylett RV, then you just give our team the fair opportunity to earn your business when you're ready. And it all starts with a raw chassis, just like everything. And frankly, I'm not going to belabor the point of getting too technical, because you know who else has these nice, well-engineered, custom-engineered, E-coated chassis? Just about everybody. Just about everyone's going to have something very similar. I don't want to spend a lot of time in this video talking about what makes everyone the same. I want to focus in on the things that we found value in Wildwood here at Haylett RV and why we think it's such a superior brand. And obviously we're not the only ones that feel that way, considering they're not just a top 10, top 5, but they're a top 3 brand in the marketplace. One cool thing here, this, if you're not familiar, that is a slide out. This chassis, this looks to be a 27 RKS chassis. It's ridiculous that I can recognize that by looking at a raw chassis, but you do this long enough and you start to pick up trends. Anyway, so this is a rack and pinion slide on what will be a full-blown Wildwood. Now what's kind of cool here is these Wildwoods come with a little hex nut adapter to be able to quickly and easily operate your stabilizer jacks. That exact same thing doubles as your manual override. You can hook it right up to that slide motor right there and run the slide in or out with something like an 18-volt drill that you might have around the house, or frankly, it's not a bad idea to have one of those dedicated to your camping equipment. So that's a good indicator of what you're looking at with this brand. It's a very smart money, high volume brand where they find where one simple item, that little hex nut adapter, can perform 2 very big functions for you. Next comes the new Accessibelly, which, God, I love that name. I like anytime you take 2 words and mash them into one Franken word. But instead of a corrugated underbelly sheet, which basically looks like cardboard made of plastic, which there's nothing wrong with that stuff. There really isn't. Wildwood decided to go with this molded plastic sheeted underbelly. And what I like about this is it comes in like 4x8 sheets. And the reason it's called an Accessibelly is if you ever, I hope you never need to, kind of like, I hope you never use a spare tire. I hope you never need the cough syrup in your cabinet. And I hope you never have to call your car insurance agent for a fender bender. But God forbid you do have to get into this underbelly. It is really nice to be able to drop a single sheet panel to access the thing you need and then replace the panel, and there is absolutely no signature that you've ever had to do any work to this RV. In contrast, a corrugated, the plastic cardboard looking underbelly stuff, again, it's fine, but the hiccup with that is if you ever have to do any service on it, you either have to drop the entire belly, which is very labor intensive and will cost you a lot at a service shop when tech labor goes well over $100 an hour nowadays, and if you don't do that, if you just cut a little access panel into it with a little razor blade Stanley knife, the only thing you can do to put it back up is to tape it in place. And I know, with my experience in this business, there's nothing wrong with that. But I also know that if this were my trailer, and I'm not really okay with the fact that there's now duct tape holding up the underbelly after you had to work on it. This makes sense. This will be found on the full Wildwoods. However, this will be not on the X-Lite series. The full Wildwoods, in conjunction with this, also have a forced air direct heated underbelly, also not found on the X-Lite model. So there is still a little bit of a difference there. And one more little thing I noticed. It's a tiny thing, but tiny things can sometimes make big differences. This is their propane line. When I get down on a knee doing my RV video tours and I look at an underbelly most of the time, you can usually see the propane line running around. And a lot of brands have adopted the rubberized flexible hosing here, a little more impact resistant, doesn't get crimped, and that's great. I don't know that I've ever seen another brand do this. And I'm not saying nobody else does. I'm saying I've never consciously recognized it. I like how this is on top of the lip of the I-beam, because now it's protected from dirt and debris from underneath, especially important around areas like that wheel well, where wheels are throwing all kinds of junk. It's nice that even though some debris might hit the top of the wheel well and then dribble onto this, it's not ever getting direct impact. And I think that's a good long-term longevity item. I don't know that the propane line down here would cause a problem, but I feel like I know that this won't. From there, you start to see the water tanks come into place, and this is the kind of stuff you can't see in an RV that's just on the lot. First of all, you see that the holding tanks are banded in place, so they're not going to wiggle jiggle around. I call that hashtag jiggle bang. But once more, they also have put additional little support brackets in here to make sure those things stick in place. Now there's a neat little thing with the, whether it's the heated underbelly on a Wildwood or a non-heated underbelly, I kind of caught them, I'm here after hours, they were kind enough to let me in, I kind of just kicked in the door, but the insulation that you see sticking out here, a layer of residential batten insulation, that will actually be the next thing that goes down on top of the tanks. And then the water lines go on top of that. And that right there is a key little difference in the Wildwood production. Not from every other brand, but from most other brands. Most brands will run the water lines here in this nice, easily accessible, open underbelly. And that makes sense. Like from a production standpoint, it's simple, it's easy, it's very logical. Wildwood has always put their water lines on top of that insulation, even in a non-enclosed underbelly such as an X-Lite, to make sure that those water lines have that extra layer of residential batten insulation, which is like an R7 material, that extra layer of protection right there. Now obviously you see from there the floor starts to go on, and one of the things I talk about, but you rarely get to see, is the fact that we are using here a 5/8 tongue and groove plywood floor decking. And you'll see a lot of times where there's a lot of staples around the edge to keep things quick held in place. Other things are later done after that to help hold things in place, such as these giant lag bolts that go down through the floor and always connect to an outrigger. They're also using full width outriggers, and they mount the walls above the floor to make sure that all of that vertical stress has a direct structure point right below it, so that you don't have floors that crown and bend and sag over time, because that's just a great way to have a failed floor long term. Alright, so we got our foundation set. We've got a good foundation. Now everything starts going up. But what's interesting, if you notice, RVs are almost built inside out. Like in a house, they put up the skeleton, they put up the walls, and then, you know, the plumber, the electrician, etc. comes in and they start doing the work inside. RVs are almost built the opposite. They're built from the inside out. Cabinets are placed inside and walls are wrapped around them. Now, here's a good example of, like I said, the water lines run above the insulation, but they, you can see where they pull them up through the floor right here. And you can see how that line is actually on top of the insulation there. Now, one other thing I took note of over here is the protective measures that they're taking in this plant to ensure that their workers who are working fast, who are moving fast, who are wearing these big, you know, Batman utility belts full of tools and screws and everything else hanging off of them, off their hips, you know, to make sure that they're not going to scuff stuff up. And I noticed down here, I was like, what are you doing with this? They say, oh, well, we take excess board materials and we just quick tape them down. We tell our workers, make sure you're walking on these so that no one's really ever been on your flooring until you take the camper home, except for maybe, you know, your Haylett RV salesperson that you met here at our dealership in southern Michigan. And I thought this is really cool, because this is station number 1. And immediately they have floor protection down to make sure that this nice looking herringbone pattern flooring here is not all scuffed up and scarred up. That's just a lot of care and concern that I just frankly wasn't expecting to see when I came in here today. I really don't know that I've seen this in almost any other facility that I've ever toured. Now at a glance here, it kind of looks like everything stays the same for a little bit, but there's a lot happening. This is where they start running plumbing and whatnot. And another thing I noticed is like this wall, that is the bedroom wall opposing the bedroom. So this is actually the bed right here, and that's the wall that you're staring at on a 27 RKS Wildwood. You see those two 2x6 backers up there? That's your TV mount area. I mean, you can mount a heavy-duty TV to that sucker. That is way overkill from what I expected. Very often in laminated, in fifth wheel, in stick and tin trailer production, whatever, on the back of a simple Luan wall panel, there's just another piece of Luan kind of glue laminated to it. This is awesome. If you want to put a big 40-inch something or other up there, you absolutely can. But the other thing I wanted to show you here before they start to put more of the sidewalls up, here we go, is the structure that goes in under the shower. I'm a big dude. Sometimes I weigh more than others, but I always weigh more than some other people. And I got down here and I looked, and even down here, they're using 5/8 plywood flooring with a ton of feet, basically, on the platform. And the fact that this is elevated, that's actually RV code. They have to do things like that. They have to leave that gap there. And that's why all showers and tubs always have that little bit of step up. And pretty much like everybody else, you see the little PEX plumbing things. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about this because it is largely an industry standard thing, but at least they're doing it, and they're not doing it. And then all of a sudden, bam, it starts to take shape, and all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah, that's a trailer, okay. But as the nose and the sidewalls come on, there's a key thing here I want to take your attention to. You see that little silver band up there, and you see them all over the place down here where the floor meets the wall. This is called hurricane banding, and this is a variation of something you see in a lot of residential construction in like Florida, you know, where they have rough storms that come in off the oceans. What this is doing here is just this one extra lashing point to help keep everything held together, to make sure that the walls and the floors stay together and that you don't have things, you know, wiggling apart going down the road. Because frankly, in transit, this thing's a rolling earthquake. You know, you've got hurricane force winds outside, which is appropriate that it's called hurricane banding, and you've literally got earthquake stress going inside, so every little bit of everything helps. And something just struck me. You know, I kind of mentioned how they had that flooring protection, but I've been through a lot of different production facilities. This is pretty clean. I mean, it's an active working shop. I'm not saying there's zero particulate on the floor, but it's not just like a crazy mess. You know, it's not there's not just random garbage thrown on the floor that people are stomping through and tracking through your trailer. Everything in here is very well kept. You can tell they take a very active pride, not just in their product, but the workplace at Wildwood. It's the kind of thing I like, because that's kind of what we do at Haylett RV. Like if I'm walking through my parking lot at Haylett's and a piece of debris blows in from Walmart down the street, I pick it up, I get it out of there. Now real quick, any backer in a sidewall is plywood, and that is a really special quality to me, because I looked at it and I noticed it's a 3/8 plywood, and I thought, oh, they must just be using that as like that it's leftover scrap from other areas of the RV production. And I got to thinking, Wildwood doesn't use 3/8 decking pretty much anywhere. This is a purposely purchased, brought in material. They specifically buy plywood for sidewall backers, for things like outside speakers, for things like a furnace vent. Everything on this is intentional. Nothing is like a secondary leftover scrap material. This is a primary brand, not the JV team. Okay, now another neat thing right here, something I noticed. In a lot of stick and tin RV production, when you have 110 wiring, meaning like a household socket, this is a bedroom CPAP outlet effectively up here in that specialized CPAP holder that Wildwoods have now. Wherever they're running it through, they actually route a hole through it, and then they put a little conduit beam effectively to make sure that that wiring never has a sharp edge that's going to rub on it and cause a short over time. And the reason I wanted to point this out, again, it's a thing you can't see, but in a lot of stick and tin production, what they will do is they'll actually cut a notch into this. They'll just place the wiring in, and then they put like just a little maybe galvanized panel or a sheet or something that maybe looks like that hurricane banding outside of it. And there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. It won't hurt your wiring, but it does severely limit the amount of wood structure remaining. Like obviously they've gone through the wood beam right here, so there's less wood than there could be, but there's still wood here and wood here instead of only wood here with a big old gap right there just waiting to bend, buckle, twist, and break this thing. It's those extra little things again that make the big differences over time. Now, historically in the wood skeleton constructed RV travel trailer business, brands would often just roll insulation up the sidewall real quick, and they would expect the sidewall metal to hold it in place. I'm not sure that everybody does what I'm about to say, that I know that everybody that we carry at Haylett RV does this. This is all hand cut, hand tucked, hand glued in place. So you can see that there's no gaps, there's no missing insulation chunks, and you're thinking, yeah, but what about these wood studs? Wood is actually an excellent insulator, and it kicks aluminum's butt when it comes to insulation. Aluminum is actually very prone to condensation and water. Well, what's the number one thing you don't want in this trailer? Water, right? Well, they're making sure that this thing's not going to condensate in here. And you notice they do that on the nose. They also do it all the way up the sidewall. That is all glued in place, and you can see no gaps in the insulation pattern on this trailer. Now, here's a neat thing. Remember I said how Salem's and Wildwoods are both built in this plant. We're a Wildwood dealer at Haylett RV. If you see a floor plan you like, obviously we can fulfill it. Doesn't matter what name is on the front. Ours just happens to say Wildwood. But they attach the sidewall metal from the top down. I'm actually glad that I got them stopped like halfway in process like this. And you're thinking, why does that matter? Why is he talking about it going from the top down? Well, statistically, it's some overwhelming number. Like 80% of sidewall aluminum damage happens down here at like chest height. This is the action zone of an RV. This is where you're tossing a football, throwing a frisbee. This is where things happen, accidents happen. This is where somebody, like my older brother, when he was not a graceful child, he would trip and fall face first into the side of our family camper. That happened more than once. And his old hard nugget of a head potentially could have dented up sidewall aluminum. But God forbid you have a brother like mine, it would happen down here. Now, since these panels are attached from the top to the bottom, it is simpler, faster, easier to replace panels from the bottom up. So it's more likely that you'll spend less labor money getting a Wildwood repaired in terms of a sidewall aluminum damage item versus, I don't know, a lot of other brands potentially. And I don't specifically know how every single brand hangs their aluminum. It's possible this is more industry standard, but I know how these guys do it now thanks to walking through this factory here. Also, one more thing. On the bottom of that floor is a material called Darko. That's a normal material. It's a polypropylene weave, which is a fancy way of saying it's a woven plastic blanket, effectively. But I like how they actually wrap theirs all the way up under the diamond plate. I think that's a really neat feature that they're doing right here. Now, as we go through, I want to discuss something that they do on this called Tough Coat. Our nose aluminum on these is 67% thicker. It's a 0.04 inch thickness versus a 0.024 inch. They do that so that you can have this nice, clean, smooth metal front without worrying about wind buffeting, causing indentations. The whole nose is effectively like diamond plate, although they obviously still hang a sheet of diamond plate to give you the visual aesthetic that you're expecting. Otherwise, you'd think that they were going to be cheap. Now, on Wildwoods, these darker bands right here, those are going to be a 33% thicker 0.03 thickness because darker metal can absorb more heat, so it helps prevent heat expansion and contraction. Also, all of the sidewall metal here has a anti-scratch coating on it. Another thing here is they've made this RV look very good without tacking on a bunch of those Nike Adidas swoosh decals. It looks good without it. Like, it's not even done being built, but it still already is starting to generate a lot of eye appeal, isn't it? Well, they did that without a lot of decals. They have, if you look down the line there at the Wildwoods that we'll see near the end of the line, you can see how there's just a couple little decals. There's nothing major. The only major decal is just the one on the nose. And you're going to say, oh, they just did that to be cheap. Nope. That would have been my assumption too, but that's why I came here today to learn more about this product. They went away from sidewall decals, but the extra thick metal bands and that anti-scratch coating costs more money than common RV decals. So they made it look better and they made it last longer. They didn't do it the cheaper way, they just did it the dollar better way. And a good shot here of the roof before all the skin goes on it. You can see that these have a full 5-inch vaulted roof truss. There's quite a bit of 4.5-inch vaulted roof trusses out there, and they're fine. There's absolutely nothing wrong with them. Wildwood did opt for a little bit larger 5-inch vaulted roof truss though, because it allows them to have a little bit taller air ducts, and that means more airflow for your family, more efficiency, and less sweating. And if the kids are not sweaty, hot, cranky, then everyone's going to win. Now, just like we saw at the ground level, where the sidewalls meet up with the roof, you see that same hurricane banding put in place down the side of the RV to help make sure everything stays lashed together, because once again, it's a rolling earthquake with hurricane force winds outside, and you want to make sure they don't fall apart. Now that 3/8 walkable roof decking comes on, and there's a couple things here. You can see, if you look, how they have sanded the edges where those sheets meet one another. Then over top of those seams, they actually put a seam tape so that on the roof membrane, you won't see those seams. Also, when this thing is bouncing and jiggling down the road, you want to make sure that there's going to be almost like plate tectonics on the earth, almost like these shifting plates where they're going to jiggle up and down a little bit. You want to make sure those rough edges, which they've made less rough by sanding them, don't rub up and rub on the roof membrane and cause a hole from the inside out. That's obviously the wrong thing. So they add a seam tape to that to further smooth that along, to make sure that this thing's not going to break itself just from common road use, even after years of use. And this is pretty cool right here. Before the awning, or not the awning, the rain gutter goes on, they actually wrap the roof membrane all the way over the sidewall. The roof membrane does not stop at the sidewall's edge, effectively. It wraps all the way around. I see that done on a lot of big fifth wheels. What that's doing for us is it takes that seam and moves it from an area of high stress to low stress, because where the wall meets the roof is an area where the highest levels of towing stress are actually expressed. When you're going down the road, you go over that bump on those tires, the shock and the jolt of that, it travels up the sidewall until it has nowhere to travel anymore, and then it rattles the GBs out of that roof. So having that seam moved is a really big thing. Before it's wrapped over though, there's a butyl tape put under that, then it's fastened in place, and then a rain channel goes in place. So there's like multiple layers of protection involved. There's multiple things on top of and screwing over the top of that seam and sealing it to make sure that you're not going to have a water exposure there. Now this right here is the last station before the slide goes in, so we're going to take a peek at the slides here. But there's a couple things I wanted to look at. First of all, that is that awesome 12 volt 10.7 cubic foot compressor fridge over there. But remember how we talked about the floor protection? Look at these little production shields that they have for their refrigerators. They make sure that, once again, their workers walking around those tool belts full of tools and screws and hammers and everything else aren't accidentally bumping into and scratching up the front of that beautiful stainless front refrigerator. Now down here, Wildwoods, when the slide's all the way open or closed, always have a triple sealed slide system. You have an exterior bulb, an interior bulb that will be engaged when the slide's fully open or closed, but always you have double wiper seals right here. So that as the slide's going in and out, you have double the chance of making sure water doesn't get into the RV. Now as water does hit these, it will tend to work its way down, and that's where they have this one-piece molded little trap tray right here that'll shunt water down around and exhaust it out of the RV so it's not getting into your floor and into your sidewall. So what's really cool over here with these slide outs, these are basically miniature Wildwoods. They're built with the exact same sort of thicknesses and methods. Like, you can see the same wall structure. You can see how they have the exact same hand-tucked, hand-glued insulation system here. Also, a neat little thing going on now as of the late 2020 model years, the white skin Wildwoods moving forward. They're all pre-prepped for slide awning toppers. So if you do want to add that extra layer of protection and sunshade, you absolutely easily can. Another really cool thing here is the roof of this slide is built basically just like the roof of a main Wildwood. It has a 3/8 decking, and the roof of a Wildwood slide is just as walkable as the actual Wildwood camper body itself. From here, once that slide is in, at this point, it pretty much looks like a Wildwood. Like when you're just driving through our lot at Haylett RV, you're like, oh yeah, that's about what that looks like right there. The shell is pretty much finished. Now the workers move in, and a lot of the work comes from the inside out. This is where they start finishing up wiring, installing appliances, finish hanging certain cabinets that don't get hung up until the roof is in place. And a thing I haven't really talked about, something that's already happening at this point in their production line, is there are multiple quality control agents along the way periodically through the process that are already actively identifying and correcting things that maybe need it, so that by the time it gets further down, someone else isn't picking up, basically, what's that old phrase that crap rolls downhill? Well, they don't do that here. They stop things in production, on the line, on the fly, to make sure that by the time it's on a truck and at my facility, it's ready for sale. It doesn't need work, it doesn't need apologies. So something funny I just discovered. The stable steps that you love on these Wildwoods, they're actually one of the very last things to go on, so that effectively you're one of the very first people that have touched it. Kind of like how they put that protective flooring in these things so that you're the first people to walk on your new floor too. So coming in, again, they're protecting the floors. Now there's always a measure of particulate in any sort of build process. But one of the things I noticed is, like, as they're constructing this furniture, they're actively controlling their debris. You know, it's not totally, completely spick and span right now, because nothing being built is. When you watch a stick-built home get built, it's not totally spick and span. But they're already working on keeping it under control so it doesn't get out of control, so you don't have a pigged-out trailer when you get it. So like I said, this is the point where they start, you know, getting the stuff installed, getting things set. They're already starting to quality control and actively inspect appliances. The microwave goes in at the next station. Quality control in this is, like I said, a live action thing that's happening on the fly during the production of this RV. We're nearing the end of the production line now, and you can see that things are really starting to take shape. It really kind of happens quickly once those walls go up. You can see that they got the furniture in place. Now, this is actually an interesting RV to look at, because one of the things that we talk all about the Wildwoods here at Haylett RV is that 10.7 cubic foot 12 volt compressor fridge. But you look right there and you see a 6 cubic foot gas and electric refrigerator freezer. That is an available option. Now, it's probably not something we are going to actively have on hand at Haylett RV, due to the fact that we have different things that already have that refrigerator or something like it or something bigger or whatever. But if you love everything there is about a Wildwood and you're like, nope, I'm going to go off-grid and I'm not going to do anything with solar and extra batteries, and I just want a propane fridge because that's what my grandpa had and that's what makes me feel good. Well, it is here and it is available. You're probably just going to have to have that unit special built for you, because very few dealers are going to stock it that way. And we've reached the literal end of the line, the end of the production line here at the Wildwood facility. Thank you for hanging with us. But notice, even here, that stable step hasn't gone on yet. It's literally like the very last thing that goes on the camper. I don't know that necessarily has anything to do with quality. I just thought it was an interesting production feature. Now, a couple more key details, things that you can't see. Every single RV produced out of this facility goes through a seal test. There's a machine called a Seal Tech machine. We have one at Haylett RV. If you ever want to come visit, we could show you. Basically, there's an insert that stuffs into that door, and it puts a high air pressure into the RV, so that if there are any gaps, any voids, which are very flowery, fancy, nice talk words for the word leak, which is a scary 4-letter word, and we don't like 4-letter words in sales. My point is, it will push air out of the RV. You're not pushing water into the RV during that test. Additionally, these are scales. Every single RV built in this facility is scaled, showing you exactly the weight of that RV as that one is built, with the options present on that specific trailer. So when you look at the weight tag at Haylett RV off of Wildwood, it does not say the rough weight is about. It says the weight of this trailer is. So if you're really trying to double check your towing capacities and whatnot, you can always know what a Wildwood weighs. That being said, a real quick note for you, ladies and gentlemen. This is a common misunderstood point. When you look through a brochure, it says unloaded vehicle weight. That is a rough estimated weight of either a base RV or often an average weight of the most commonly built version of that RV. Another thing people rarely understand is when you look at an RV brochure and it says hitch weight. People say, well, is that loaded? Is that unloaded? It always and must be an unloaded hitch weight. And the reason being, no two people are ever going to pull an RV with the exact same cargo. No two people are ever going to load their cargo in the same way. Some people add more batteries than others. Some people add extra generator trays to the tongues and bike racks and all kinds of things. So the only consistent metric that a manufacturer can give you is an unloaded, dry hitch weight. Always keep that in mind. Always use it as a good reference and starting point. It's a guide, not a Bible. And here, back outside again, on this beautiful Michiana day, which once again is that fictitious land between Michigan and Indiana, is the final product. You see a full Wildwood on the left, you see an X-Light on the right. Now, there's really not a lot of physical difference between them, but there's a very obvious visible difference between them. The X-Lite has a 6.5 foot interior, and it rides on a little bit smaller chassis, and it only requires 2 steps, so it sits much lower to the ground. It also uses a different type of slide system that's a little bit lighter weight. Whereas a full-blown Wildwood, it's taller, it uses a different type of slide that requires a bigger chassis. A lot of the floor plans are larger, so the bigger chassis makes sense, and that's why these have a triple step. But what I like between them is that largely the equipment in the appointments is hyper standardized with only a very small number of really class-defining qualities to kind of go from like a true sort of starter class to a very like respectable, I call that like that mid-size sedan class. You know, every auto manufacturer builds a full-size, a mid-size sedan, and I don't care if it's your first car or your last car. That's a nice car, and that's something you can be proud of owning and driving. That's sort of what a full Wildwood is. Now, I'm not going to walk through and do like a full walkthrough video tour. We have volumes, literally over 4,000 of those have we recorded under our belt here at Haylett RV. But I thought I'd give you a quick visual look. Like, here's a basic no-slide bunkhouse X-Lite. This is one of the most common layouts in the entirety of the RV business. It's the best-selling bunkhouse model from the Wildwood family. And by contrast, here's a full-blown Wildwood. Like I said, a little bit taller, and you get the taller slide as a result, which allows for these just monstrously sized panoramic viewing windows, but those roll-down shades will really black out the sun. Also, brand new at the time of this filming is this really cool feature, the Versa Lounge. So for what, 50 years basically, I think the RV industry has done the same thing. A 2-bench dinette and a sofa. And that's what everybody does. And they've done it that way because, gosh darn it, that's how it's always been done. And the folks at Wildwood went, forget that. What if we just didn't be boring anymore? And it's actually incredibly simple, but at the same time, it's incredibly awesome. Here's what it is. This is a removable backer that slots in place to give you a normal 2-bench dinette. But obviously, you can flip it around the other way. It comes with that extra cushion, and you can convert this couple's camper into this giant, like, roughly 8-foot long J lounge. And I like the fact it's called a J lounge because my name's Josh and that starts with a J, so whatever. But the fact is, you get this huge, in the residential world they call it a chaise lounge, or is it chaise, or I don't know. Anyway, I don't do well with flowery, fancy language. I tend to call a spade and a duck a duck. But the point is, now, sitting here in this couple's camper, I've got a place where, frankly, on a rainy day, I could throw a pillow up there, grab a blanket, and I could take myself a nice little nap. But how about the fact that if here in this couple's camper we could have the world's biggest guest bed? So suddenly, instead of a child-sized jackknife sleeper sofa, and instead of a child-sized fold-down dinette, we have a multiple adult-sized, like 3-foot by 12-foot multi-adult sleeper. Now there's little gaps here and there. You know, any sort of dinette or sofa situation isn't exact. It's not, you know, it's not the Ritz-Carlton, ladies and gentlemen. This is a guest sleeper, and you don't want them too comfortable because you want them to come call us at Haylett RV so that, you know, they can buy an RV from us. But neither here nor there. I'm being facetious, obviously. If what you can do here is, you might have noticed how there is an ungodly amount of stow-and-go storage, 20.3 cubic foot of stow-and-go storage to be exact. And I like to call this the superior stackable stow-and-go compared to the previous generation because obviously the totes can stack up. Neat note on these are actually the type of material, if you wanted to, you could use them as dry food storage without contaminating your food. They even considered food storage with these at Wildwood. You can tell that this is designed by somebody who grew up camping and not just an engineer who goes, hey, wouldn't it be a gas if we threw plastic in it? You know, it makes sense what they're doing. What I was getting at, though, you got this huge storage compartment down below. You could easily have 1 or 2 roll-out foam topper pads to put on this and convert it into a giant, very comfortable sleeper. So maybe you're into hunt and camp, fish and camp, you got a buddy camp kind of situation, but, you know, it's more of a couple's camper most of the time. Well, once again, they found a way to please everybody here in Wildwood. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. I really appreciate the time here today. If you appreciate the time and the effort that we put in, all I ask in return for our efforts once again, is for the fair opportunity to earn your business at my family's dealership at Haylett RV. So we're willing to take a trip down here to show you the ins and the outs of the production facility. And apparently, once I stepped out the door, they finally locked me out because I noticed that all these doors are closed suddenly. But the fact is, we are willing to go to this extra length to show you truly what's under the curtain behind the scenes and what is under hammer, screw, and nail. Imagine what we'd do for you if we met you in person. So with that, take care, stay safe, have fun, happy camping, everyone. And remember that we don't do hidden dealer fees, but we do everything else, including hitching, pieces, parts, trades, finance, truck and trailer package deals, RV delivery, and everything in between.